Welcome to episode 75 Kontrarian Korner. I'm Ben Kellerin. Today we have a very special guest on to talk with us about the preparation and his experience firsthand, which I think will be fascinating to get some of the stories and some of the different experiences he's been through on his kind of unconventional path after getting out of high school. And I think it's definitely something that I wish I would have had 10, 15 years ago, because I would probably be in a different position right now on a lot of different things. But I think it'll be a fascinating conversation. I'm sure we'll get off into a couple of rabbit holes as well. But Maxim, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben. I really do appreciate it, man.
Yeah, so I had, for anyone that hasn't listened to a couple episodes ago, I had Maxim's dad on the podcast. We got into markets, current events, and kind of the preparation, the background. And after that conversation, I was like, I got to get the story straight from the source, get the firsthand experience. So what was, how did this all start? Like, how long did it take to develop, and where, what were your kind of thoughts, like, as this was going from just an idea in your head to, okay, we're going to actually go out and do this?
Sure. It was about a little over 2 years ago at this point that the preparation started, and we didn't realize that it did start in the first place because it all just came about through the fact that I personally was lost, and my dad wanted to do something about that. Um, but how it all started was I was 17, and like most 17-year-olds nowadays, especially 17-year-old men, I think, are completely lost and have nothing to look forward to. I mean, it seems like there's really nothing worth doing now. Um, I mean, half your money gets taken away, the money that you work for. You can't afford a home. Seems like anywhere you go, there's not really something worth doing, especially if you don't want to be like what would you call it, a desk monkey for the rest of your life. There's really not too much to do. Of course, you could go in the trades, but even that is very limited as well. So for me, I knew I didn't want to go to college. I knew I was set on it. My dad wasn't crazy about it. He didn't push me one way or the other. Being an entrepreneur, he just let me do my own thing, go my own way. But it wasn't until after I went to a Wrangler school and finished that, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be a Wrangler, just working with horses, horsemanship, all that. And I reached out to the head of the school, who you might have seen this guy's videos on YouTube. Actually, he's known for being a man's man, being the guy who supposedly supports young men. And he's this old cowboy with this big beard and smokes cigars all the time. And makes these kind of motivational talk videos. But he had this great Wrangler school. I went to it, and on my way home, I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to send a message to this guy, let him know I had a great time, and that I want to work for him, even without pay. I don't care. I just want to learn from him. And that was the one thing I thought I would be interested in doing going into the future. But even after sending an email and text, I heard nothing from him, which was really strange. And I waited and waited for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. 2 weeks, yeah. And then I told my dad, I said, I don't know what to do. Which, being a stupid 17-year-old, it's like, oh, the one thing I tried didn't work, so now everything's lost. But this is when the stars aligned and things came together, because Doug Casey had been trying to get my dad to write the preparation, or what would be the preparation, for about 12 years. Originally, he wanted to call it Renaissance Man, and it was going to be a guide for primarily young men to become Renaissance man, like how to get started and where to go, what to do. And my dad put it off for a long time because there just wasn't, he didn't find any use in actually writing a book, especially when Doug had always told him that it was brain damage to write a book. It just was a hassle. So my dad didn't find it worthwhile until he realized that I was lost. And that's where it all started. That's where it all came about. And Doug gave me and my dad a list of games, activities, and occupations that he thought, if a young man went and did all these things, became competent in all, or at least most of them, that he would be far, far above the rest. And that's where I started. My dad added becoming an EMT to the list of occupations, and that was the first thing I did. Um, so that's how the preparation started, but it's developed quite a bit over the last 2 years. I mean, in the beginning, I was just going off of what would be most interesting and worthwhile to do, basically jumping from one big idea to the next. So, like, okay, EMT school, go through that, or working on wildfires. Okay, that's one big thing. But over time, it's really developed into a full-fledged program for people to use, where we have each cycle, 3-month cycle, divided up into different sections. So you have the anchor courses, which is the main thing people go after, the main thing they pursue. Then you have activities, which could be anything from sailing to scuba diving to motorcycle racing to skeet shooting, whatever. Then we have a whole list of academics, required and optional reading, and the reflection as well, where people create a Substack page and write about what they do each week to hold themselves accountable. So it's turned into a massive thing over the last few years, and it's hard to describe how much it's developed since the beginning, because we were literally working off of what could have been written on a napkin in the beginning. So it's gone quite far.
Well, that's how the best plans usually start, back in the napkin somewhere. So
I
as
guess
far
so.
as your kind of firsthand experience, I want to get into some of the stuff that you found most valuable or best experiences, some of the stuff where you're like, oh my gosh, why am I here?
Sure.
But basically, if you have a couple like stories or experiences that you think would be interesting to tell, I'd love to hear those.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of crazy things over the last few years, just because the the great thing about it is you're forcing yourself to dive into so many things in such a short period of time. Um, so I guess one of the most interesting things, strangest things I've done was going to the Falkland Islands to learn how to sail. And that was, I mean, man, it was so strange to fly into the Falklands. I mean, you fly into a military base that was left over from the Malvinas War, the Falklands War between Argentina and Great Britain back in the 80s, when they had this really dumb war over this desolate island. It's beautiful, but desolate. There's nothing worth fighting for over there. But you fly into a military base, you get off, and the winds are so rough, they're so harsh, that on the bus ride from the airport to the one main town on the island, the bus is swaying in the wind. It's so rough. But yeah, we got to the boat, and there were only two other customers besides me going there to take the competent crew course, which is in the Royal Yachting Association's like list of courses. It's the beginner course, like very beginning start off point. But we got on the boat, and again, the winds were so rough for, I think, a day or two, that we had to stay in port for those 2 days before we could even leave, because it's me and two other old women getting on this boat who are customers. So starting off in really bad weather would have been a bad idea. But we got started, in the first night we actually sailed. I will never forget it, because we left from Stanley, which is the capital, the main town there, and we had, I think it was a 14-hour leg sailing overnight, and I'll never forget getting seasick, because that is one of the most terrible short-term sicknesses you can have. You're sailing at night, especially, it's even worse, and you're trying to look off on the horizon, trying to find a point where you can focus on and the boat's just oscillating back and forth the entire time in rough waves, in rough weather. And it was rough. And I threw up once and I passed out until 1 p.m. the next day. It was awful. But to kind of fast forward throughout the entire thing, we sailed throughout all of the Western Islands, basically, all of the interesting Western islands of the Falklands, and visited all these different places. We met a famous sailing family called the Ponces, who, just to give you some context, the son was born on the island of South Georgia on the table of their boat in the dining room. So they're like a full-fledged sailing family. But in between jumping from island to island, we were doing sailing maneuvers the entire time. And it was one of the most interesting experiences I've had by far. It was wild. But besides that, working on wildfires was also crazy. I mean, getting dropped onto a wildfire at 18 years old, there's really nothing like it. When you first arrive to a wildfire, you're surrounded by smoke, usually. And when you actually get onto the fire, you're watching helicopters and planes drop retardant and water. You feel the heat of a wall of fire. Sometimes the places where you're at, these like safety zones, get run over by fire, so you have to retreat. And that happened to us one time. Just lots of crazy stuff. But I don't know. Do you have any specific questions about a specific thing? Because honestly, man, so much has happened within the last 2 years. It's really hard to pin down a specific story, because there's the sailing, there's wildfires, there's EMT school, there's being apprenticed to an Uruguayan gaucho here. There's honestly too much to recall at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of look at it. I'm jealous kind of looking back on what I did in college, where it's like, oh, great. Like, another round of supply and demand and macroeconomics. And I mean, there's some stuff in business school that was like helpful for what I do now, but mostly is like self-taught after the fact. But I guess the question I did have when you're kind of talking about what you've already done, like, what are you looking forward to the most of kind of what's coming up next?
Well, the farthest I have planned out into the future is the beginning of next year, and I'll be going with the program. I'll be doing the fighter cycle. I'll be heading to Thailand to train Muay Thai for about 2 months. So that's what I'm looking forward to now. After that, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that'll be from the middle of January to the end of March. So
Nice.
Looking forward to a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things I'm definitely looking forward to, because later on I know I'll go to Italy to do the chef cycle that we have, where we take between 1 and 3 months to go to Florence and go through a chef course, an Italian cooking course. So that'll be very interesting. There's the heavy equipment operator course in Florida. There's the builder course, where you go to Maine to learn how to build a house. So there will be a lot more interesting things after that. But
definitely sounds like it. You mentioned the fighting stuff. Is there a section or kind of 3-month piece of it dedicated to like firearms and weapons and stuff like that, or does that come later maybe?
No, we don't have a 3-month cycle dedicated to that, but as part of Doug's section of activities, he added in all the firearms training. And there's actually some great places you can go to in the States. Most of the time you have to be over 21. Some places it's 25, where they do a combination of defensive driving techniques and shooting. So I think for the people who are older going into the preparation, that would be more worthwhile than just, going to a range and learning how to shoot different guns.
Yeah.
Just because you learn how to do J turns and slide blocks in a car, how to drift. They teach you all these things, and how to shoot from a car as well. So I think I think that's mentioned in the book. I can't remember, but that'll be something worthwhile for people who go through it too.
Yeah, definitely. I guess before we move on to some of the other topics I think would be interesting is have you had an experience so far where you're like, basically, this is a disaster, like it's turned into something where, like, I'm sure there's a couple times, like you mentioned the seasick thing where it's just like, oh man, this is brutal. But are there other times where you're like, okay, but what have I got myself into? Why am I doing this? Have there been like certain stories that come on the other side of this experience?
Yeah, there's only really been one thing where it went in a very different direction than I thought it would, not a super positive direction. Because I got this offer, which just being a part of this and getting so many things done, it's really crazy to see how many opportunities people offer me. It's really wild. But I got this offer to work on a IP induced polarization geophysics crew. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh, this sounds cool. This sounds like I'll learn a little bit about geophysics. I'll learn a little about geology, and I'll work next to, or I'll work under some highly competent, intelligent people. And I went to Nevada to do that, the middle of nowhere in Nevada, and to a little town called Gabbs, with a population of about 75 people. There was one motel and one bar, and that was the main base camp. And at first, for the first week, I was working under some geologists. I think it was three Mexican geologists, and they were great guys. Great guys. I went out and I took rock samples with them. They took me to a mine, turquoise mine, actually. And the entire time, they're working for this exploration mining company looking for gold, silver, copper. And so they had, I think, 3 different sites in Nevada that they were going to go to and that I'd be along the ride for with them. But after that first week, the geophysics crew arrived, and that's where I transitioned over to doing that stuff. And I had heard about the main guy. The main guy had been doing it for 40 years. Smart guy, kind of wild, British Canadian. But he knew what he was doing. The thing I didn't realize was that they don't actually have geophysicists working on the geophysics crew. They hire whoever they can from the nearest town. And so when I saw these guys walk in, just give you some context, one guy walked in with a bucket hat with mushroom decals on it. So we weren't working. We weren't working with a lot there, and that's kind of when I realized that this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But we went out there the first couple days, and what you have to do with IP geophysics is you're laying down all this electric wire, kilometers of electric wire, out in the middle of the desert, and you're creating these points where, when you send an electrical signal into the ground, you're also able to receive it through these different pots that you place out there that kind of receive the electrical signal bouncing off of whatever you're looking for within the ground. And that gives you an underground picture of what could be there. Hopefully gold, silver, or copper. And we were supposed to measure out a couple kilometers of this area, of this one specific property, to find a periphery of hopefully gold, silver, or copper. And it's tough work. I mean, you're carrying spools of wire out there, heavy wire, for several kilometers, working out in the hot desert. And my skin is not built for that. I burn like crazy.
Yeah,
Everybody was worried about me because, yeah, exactly. But it was bad. The crew was incompetent for sure, and unfit for the job. I mean, you have to have the ability to lift heavy stuff and walk quite far and do that all day, every day, for the 6-week stint that you're supposed to be there. And a lot of bad things happened. And, like, everything that could have went wrong did go wrong. We had equipment failures, trucks break down, a truck blew a tire, a transmission blew out another truck, a guy got sick the first day, and then later on, he got shocked by the electric wire, which there's several amps running through that wire, and I think 4 amps is enough to kill a cow. And there were at least 4 amps of electricity running through there, and we were having some trouble that day. People weren't paying attention, and we sent the electric current through while he was touching the wire. And I think if he wasn't wearing his wedding ring on his left hand when he grabbed the wire, I think he would have died because the wedding ring redirected the current away from his heart. So it was just a bad group of people. I mean, not ill-willed, but unfit for the job. And I realized after 12 days of being there that I was done. I was going to stay there for the full 6 weeks, but I just decided, oh man, no, it's not worth it. So I got out of there, and I think that was the right decision. But yeah, that was a time. That was the one major thing that's happened within the last 2 years where I've been disappointed with the outcome. For
Yeah,
sure.
sounds like a couple weeks of torture is enough. But yeah, as you're kind of going through this, before we move on to some other topics,
Sure.
do you get a sense of, like, you're starting to get an idea of what you want to do moving forward? Like, I know the preparation kind of talks about be, do, and have, but have you kind of started to develop a feel for, hey, this is the path I want to go, or I want to kind of keep my options open and keep looking?
Well, I think I found more things that I don't want to do than I do want to do, which has been helpful because when going through all these different things within the last 2 years, I've checked a lot of boxes of just, I think, gaining foundational level competencies. So I get at least a clear enough understanding of what an aspect of life is like, or what a certain job is like, that I can go, oh yeah, that sounds good, or I don't know, that's probably not for me. And I like to give you an example of this. Working on wildfires is super interesting, and I was getting paid as an EMT $600 a day to work on wildfires. But it's not, it keeps you away from family for long stretches of time. If you're going to make a living at it, you have to be out there for as much time as you can get, really. And there's a lot of negative aspects to it, on top of all the positive aspects there are. But it's just not worth doing that for the rest of my life. You know, it's good for a short period of time, not worth doing forever. So I think I found a lot of things like that where, you know, I enjoy sailing. It's interesting. I enjoy the EMT work. It's good, but it's just not worth doing for a long time. I think I'm beginning to get a picture of what's worth doing going into the future, and I think it ties in to the stuff within the preparation. I think I'll continue down this general path of just doing lots of different things. I think it won't be as formalized as it is now and as it will be within the next 2 years. But I think if everything with the program and with the book goes well and a lot of people join it, I think one of my primary objectives will be to help people walk down their own path, because it completely changed my life. Honestly, it freaks me out a little bit to think about where I would be now if I hadn't started it 2 years ago, because I was anxious and angry at the world. And I think a lot of young men are like that. So if nothing happened for me, if nothing changed, I think I would have stayed the same, and it would have really ruined things, honestly, for me. So I think what I've noticed is one small change can completely shift the direction of your life in an unbelievably positive way. So I think helping people do that with this program will be a big big part of things for me in the future. I think that's my plan at the moment.
Yeah. As far as kind of speaking of the future, I think the other thing that's interesting is like kind of preparing for what may be coming kind of like grander stage with the world or the US or some of these different
Sure.
things that you see developing. And this is something where I think there's a very different viewpoint from different generations. Where if I talk to older generations, my parents, their friends, or other older people I meet, it's a very different view on where this train is headed. And I talk to younger people than people around my age and younger, and it's a very different viewpoint on kind of where all this is headed. So, what's your kind of view on where the U.S., where the world might be going over the next several decades? If we're going to see chaos, the fourth turning, whatever you want to call it, all these different things start to develop.
I think it'll be bad. I think it'll be bad for a number of reasons. I mean, not only do you have the economic aspect of things where, I mean, if you have a whole generation of young people who can't afford anything, what's, again, going back to kind of what we were talking about before we started talking, before we started recording, was like, what do young people have to look forward to? If you can't buy a house, what's the point? What's the point of working any job or doing anything, really, if there's no positive thing to work towards in the future? Especially when your culture is hinged upon the have aspect of be, do, have.
Yeah, the
Where
consumption side of things.
Exactly. But I think along with the economic aspect of things and the devaluation of the dollar, I think there's the cultural aspect, which is even more dangerous. And I think a lot of it is and has always been manufactured, but it's getting worse, obviously. I mean, it's getting worse to live in the States or in the Western world in general. If we take what was her name? The Ukrainian girl that got stabbed on the train.
I know
Irina?
exactly what you're talking about. It's Irina. I can't
Yeah.
remember her last name. I mispronounce it anyway, but I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
And you take the Charlie Kirk stuff as well. I mean, that had an oddly big impact on me, and it had an oddly big impact on a lot of younger people, even people who paid no thought to Charlie at all. It just seeing something like that happen, which is it's a I think it was manufactured. Actually, I don't think it was just some random kid going out there to shoot him, but it's part of the culture of
That story doesn't add up, but continue.
well, come on, man. What do you mean a 30-06 doesn't stop right there?
No, there's so many things where I'm just like, it's just like all it takes is a couple weeks for the story to fall apart, and it's like, we're gonna sweep it on the rug, move on to the next thing. But
Well,
anyway,
everything's like that nowadays, man. I mean, there's so much BS flying at you that you can't stick to one topic and figure it out. You know,
yeah,
it just gets swept under the rug, like you said. But I think that is another catalyst which is going to cause a lot of cultural issues because it's going to turn, and I think it is turning people, younger people specifically, in a more radical direction. And hopefully there's no young people going out there and doing anything dumb from something like that, seeing that and wanting to get some sort of revenge or retaliate in some way, because that would be bad. But I even see it talking to people around my age, and especially just recently, the like Nick Fuentes opinions are becoming popular, like anti-Jew, anti whatever. It's coming into the mainstream. That is the mainstream for young people now, or at least one of them, where I think it's going to be used against young people, well-meaning, well-intentioned young people who have been told that everything they do is wrong, especially in the West, that everything you do is wrong, your whole existence is bad. We're going to ship in millions and millions of people into your country to overturn your culture and make it as crappy as possible, basically. And you're just going to have to put up with it. And you're also going to have to put up with the fact that we're going to give free stuff to those people coming into your country, and you are going to be able to pay for anything. That's what you're going to get. And I think the anger that's going to build up from that. And let me know if you think I'm wrong about this or you have a different opinion. But I think the anger that's going to come from that, from young people, will be used against them by people who want to shape the culture more or shape the future in however they want to see it. But what do you think about the future? What are your thoughts on the next 5-10 years?
I think the next 5 or 10 years are going to be circus. I think there's a lot of things that are going to happen in financial markets and geopolitically that are going to be a mess. As far as what you're saying there about the West and the U.S., I see the same things where it's like basically anyone kind of around my age and younger, especially the men, are not like they see some of the stuff going on and it's a wake up call. I don't think it's something that can be, I guess, guided to a certain agenda. I think it's going to be like a big time shift of the Overton window where what you can and can't say is changing. What is acceptable to talk about publicly is changing. And like you see different topics coming up and it's like if you told me some of these things would be getting airtime or time on social media 5 years ago, I would have basically called bullshit. But I think part of the double-edged sword of social media is that, right, there's a lot of like slop out there, like brain rot basically, but at the same time it makes shifting the narrative happen so much faster on a lot of these topics. And I'm pretty optimistic about what I see as far as like the young guys mentality. Young women not so much, but that's also I'm sure like social media, the algorithm like feeding into it's like, okay, like you're a man, you're going to see certain things and it's going to be whatever drives the most attention, not the best and brightest the world has to offer on that front. But I think the US is basically going to be one of the best places in the Western societies to be. I think it's going to take 5 or 10 years of kind of generational turnover, different people to be in power, different things to be talked about, figured out. But I think it's something where the U.S. will figure it out. And I think it really does kind of all come back to some of the like demographic side of things with immigration. And if we can figure out that, like, U.S. will be fine. If the U.S. keeps heading down this path, then in 50 years, it's like none of this stuff's going to matter. And the U.S. will be some like mixture of what like different people, different cultures, and it's not going to work and it'll split apart. So
that's definitely true. I mean, the whole idea of America being a collection of ideas or a melting pot, and that's what it should be, is a complete lie. America's not a collection of ideas.
Basically, the ideas of people that are enemies of America and the American people, right? And that's where like people talk about, oh, diversity is the strength and all this other crap. It's like, yeah, so in the 50s, we were all just choking on the diversity when like California was like 90% white. Like you look at some of these places and pictures of what some of these like major cities were 50, 60 years ago, and it's a completely different world, right? And then you have like Civil Rights Act, which might as well be the Constitution now, and all these different things that have changed. And I kind of look at it and say, we're gonna have to figure this out. It's gonna be messy. I think that over a long enough time frame, in our lifetimes, we're going to see a king or a Caesar type figure. Like, I don't think a democratic republic is a great form of government. I think that humans naturally want like to have like the guy, the one person in charge, and he is he's the guy who basically makes the decision. He's responsible for if it goes well and responsible for if it doesn't. So I think that works way better than what we have now, right? People will say like, oh, what if you get a bad king? Like, oh, what if we elect shitty leaders that are like constantly for the last 60 years, my entire life, right? So
Yep.
it is something where if you have a king that rules in the best interest of the people of the country, I think that works better than what we have now. And if you have a king that doesn't rule in the best interests, then they don't last very long, right? Is it
It's
more violent as far as transitions of power? Maybe, but it's the most natural form of government for humans if you look back far enough. So
it's definitely better than what we have now. I do agree for sure. But I think even more so than demographics, I think I think that is an issue, obviously, especially because I do think that there is something fundamentally wrong with most cultures in the world, and that's the fact that they had and have no sense of morality or virtue. So which I think embedded within America specifically, the West, of course, but America specifically brought certain ideas, um, and with that, certain people to history, to light, that were fundamentally different than everybody else, even different than the Greeks and the Romans. I think obviously it was built off of that. At least a lot of it was, but there was a huge focus on virtue being the main thing in America, which is not at all true for Africa or much of South America. I think it's true for parts of Asia, but definitely not true for most places in the world. And I think that specifically is more important than demographics, is people with virtue trying to make things better. Because whoever wants to go to America, fine, whatever. But I think if you're not a virtuous person, what you're going to get is what we have now, which is people who just kind of roll over and say, whatever, it's fine, whatever, it's good enough.
well, I think
But
too the Western societies are coasting on like the past virtues of being Christian societies, right? And at a certain point, that was lost or forgotten or subverted, whatever kind of adjective or phrase you want to use to describe how that process happened.
Mhm.
But I think that's kind of what made the West is like that Christian foundation. And right, is there other systems that have virtue and morals and other stuff built in to make a functioning society? Maybe, but I think things definitely have been going off the rails since like the whole separation of church and state is, I think, a basically complete joke, because now what you see is the certain people's religion is, hey, we want to mutilate your kids and no kings protest, like all this other garbage that you see like happening on, like that's a religion. That's not a like political ideology. So um
Mhm.
if there's not something like Christianity or a religion that basically sets the rules, there's going to be an ideology that kind of steps in to like take that over, right? So,
That Yeah, that's for sure, and it's I think Christianity has been diluted quite a lot to where at least the range of focus on a certain amount of virtues has depleted quite a lot to where if you go to any church, it's about the virtues of faith and hope and kindness and compassion, and that's still good. But what about all the older virtues that also have a little bit of oomph to them, like courage or justice.
The fire and brimstone. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think you need some Old Testament too.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to say, well, our everything's burning down around us, but I have faith. Okay, great. So you're willing to do nothing because somehow it's going to be fixed. Which, if you talk to most Americans now, or at least a lot of them, um, they have faith in somebody else doing something to fix something, and they
Yeah.
take zero responsibility over their own lives. It's
Well,
oh, oh, yeah,
yeah.
go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say that's how you get into like this place where you have like Christians arguing against the death penalty, and that's just not biblical at all, right? We should be punishing a lot, like the whole arena. And I forget her last name, but that stabbing on the bus is like that guy should already be dead, right? We should have already punished that guy, right? Swift and just, and it's right there in front of you, right? So there's stuff like
Right.
that where I see it, and it's just like, okay, there's a solution, and the joke is there's a crown lying in the gutter for anyone that wants to pick it up and right do some of the
Mhm.
things that are required. And like you said, I don't think everyone's kind of looking around waiting to see who's gonna basically be the first one to make a move, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you watch the video, of course, it's just like a bunch of dumb-looking people sitting around in that train car, but they do nothing. They just sit there. And it's like, oh, whatever, whatever. Somebody else will come and do something, but she bleeds out in the
Yeah.
train car with people literally, what is it, 5, 6, 7 people around her? Well, somehow they don't notice this guy swing a knife into her neck and watch her bleed out. I think that is the a perfect image of what most people are in America now is just, oh,
Spectators.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I think this is another problem within the States is there's been no large scale hardship. And I think we need large scale hardship to kind of reset the balance sheet a little bit and just in people. They need to realize that life isn't about going to Starbucks and Target and um, working your blue collar job and then buying $100,000 truck so you can show it off to your buddies. Life is much more than that. And I think people will only get it when they absolutely need to go to great lengths to feed their families or feed themselves or see people literally get hurt and die in front of them. I don't think people will get the fact that they are alive, living, and that they need to shape the world around them, need to shape their own lives, need to shape themselves, and stop focusing on what other people can do for them or what they can buy. But I don't think it'll happen until people seriously see bad things before their own eyes, before it's like as Doug would say, before a greater depression comes their way, large scale suffering,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. I think it'll be chaotic. I'm not sure it's going to be something similar to the Great Depression, but I do think it is going to, whatever happens in the next 5 years, is going to reset what people prioritize and what people focus on. Because I think you're already starting to see it. There's already been kind of part of the hard times that kind of create strong men, whatever you want to call it. But you kind of know as a young man, it's like once you figure out that no one's coming to save you, it's like, oh, okay, now you understand the rules of the game, right? And
Mhm.
it's very different for other groups, and that's just kind of the way it is. But um, I look at the U.S. and I think we're going to be able to recover. Europe, I think they're basically down. They're basically up shit creek without a paddle. But I don't know where all that leads, but I think it is going to be something fascinating to kind of keep an eye on. But um, yeah, as far as any last message from the preparation that you want to leave the audience with, I think that'd be a good place to start to wrap up because when I read the book, I was like, if I had this, even from 15, 16 years old, there's a lot of stuff that I would have done differently, would have been focused on differently, and been pursuing, I think, over the last 10, 15 years. But what's kind of maybe the last message that you would maybe want to leave listeners with?
Well, you said that, young men kind of eventually kind of understand what the game is. And I think people need to stop playing the game. They need to start playing their own game. That's what they need to start doing, because the game is rigged against you. The game, being everybody else's game, is rigged against you. And I think it always has been, actually. It's always been serving someone else. It's always been about climbing a ladder, about trying to work your way up. It's actually a series of ladders throughout your entire life, checking the boxes of just getting through high school, getting through college, getting a job, getting married, having kids, retire, and then die. That's it. And that's not the right game to play. It's a very empty game. For some people, it can be fulfilling, but it's for most people, I think, an empty, meaningless existence. And everybody has a very short period of time on the planet, and I don't think people really understand that until they do begin living on their own path. Because then everything is up to you. Every success, every failure is at least 95% up to you and your own efforts. You watch the days go by much quicker, the weeks go by much quicker, months go by much quicker, years go by much quicker. And on top of that, when you're going down your own path and watching success come from your efforts, you do realize the good you yourself can do personally. And nothing is better than that. Actually, nothing's better than that, and becoming a virtuous and capable man. But that only comes from playing your own game. So I really do think that going into the future, people need to get off the train and walk their own path to live their own life. Because no matter what you think, I think the future is going to be difficult in one way or another. And it'll call upon people, I think the circumstances will call upon people to sink or swim, in a way. I think that's a good way of putting it, sink or swim. And I think the people who really swim, who really thrive, will be thriving because they take a somewhat risky path that isn't guaranteed, in a way. Like, everybody thinks that going to college will guarantee you a job, guarantee you a number of things, but and I think our culture is built upon these false guarantees, several layers of false guarantees, and I think that's all going to be washed away going into the future. So I think those are my final thoughts on the preparation, how it relates to the future.
Yeah, no, I think it didn't take me all that long to realize, like, going through a year and change of public accounting, that the like work your way up the ladder and like slave labor type hours. There's no like 40 years of a career and golden watch and American dream for people our age, right? There's like, you look at where wages were 50, 60 years ago and where they are today, it's just not even the same, right? I think I could rant on this for a long time, but if you adjust for inflation, right, minimum wage in 1960 would be like 40 or $45 an hour today, right? So it's very, very different as far as like people that are like working basic jobs could support a family back then, and now it's not even close. But anyway, before I let you go, I do have to ask my traditional closing question, which is, what book should I add to my reading list? Obviously, we talked about the preparation. People should all go get that. But maybe if you have another book that's worth reading, I'd be curious to hear it.
I think you would enjoy Education of a Wandering Man by Louis L'Amour. I have it up there somewhere. It is one of the best books I've read. It's a fantastic memoir. And Louis L'Amour is known for being an author, selling, I think, over 300 million copies of his books. But he did so many amazing things in his life. I mean, if he basically had his own preparation, he worked on a circus, he was a longshoreman, he worked on boats. I think at one point he was shipwrecked somewhere in the Middle East. He skinned cattle on a ranch in Texas. He worked as a lumberjack. He worked as a caretaker of mines. He had so many wild experiences. Was in World War II. So it's basically a brief, but very good telling of his story, or at least most of it through his eyes. And yeah, I highly recommend it. Very well written, and it's inspiring. It's I think we need more examples of great men to look up to, and Louis was one of them for sure. So that's a good one. I think you like it.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. If my listeners are looking to find your work, find the preparation, your social media or Substack or whatever, wherever they can look for you, where should they do that?
Well, if you guys want to know more about the preparation, you should go to thepreparation.com. Of course, the book preparation is on Amazon, only on Amazon. We have the hardcover, softcover, audiobook as well. And then if you want to read my weekly updates, because part of my holding myself accountable, I write just a brief explanation of what I did each week, just to hold myself accountable and keep making progress within the preparation. You can go to maximsmith.com to see that. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, no, I think people will definitely get a lot out of the conversation here and some of the stories straight from the horse's mouth, as it were. And I think for anyone that has high school age kids, high school age men, definitely worth checking out. And I think it'll be something that we continue to see with the university system is that it's not the great solution that it maybe was 50, 60 years ago. So I think with that, we'll be wrapping up. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.